Hello folks. So I'm gonna say it's story time. I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. This story is basically about how I got into a debate with a friend of mine who is a white male about the Black Lives Matter movement. I was telling this joke from this comedian that I saw on Netflix, and he was basically saying that Black Lives Matter is like the lowest form of a request that black people could start off with. Like, our lives just matter, not like matter more than yours, not better, not, we just matter. And like the fact that that's a controversial statement, or like the fact that there's somebody in the world who's like, I don't agree with that, is kind of funny. So I was retelling the joke, and my friend took offense to it, and he basically said that he didn't quite understand the concept of the Black Lives Matter movement. So I proceeded to ask him why, and we had a pretty lengthy debate about it, and at the end of the debate I ended up changing his mind, and he actually apologized to me, which, was unnecessary. I know my friend isn't racist, but I just kind of want to go over some of the questions and the things that he said, because I feel like it's how the vast majority of the white community may feel about black people and also the Black Lives Matter movement. And I feel bad because whenever white people tend to ask questions about black culture, they tend to get reprimanded. Like, even from childhood, like at the age of maybe 4 or 5, if a little white child asks their parents or somebody in public, why is their skin brown, or why do they look different, or whatever the case may be, kids are often taught, hush, like don't ask that, don't say that, that's rude, and are often taught to shut up, when they have questions. And I feel like that's why a lot of adults today have so many 5-year-old questions. And, I use that term not to be insulting or offensive, but I just feel like a lot of white people tend to be ignorant on the subject matter because so often they were told not to ask those kinds of questions. So the first thing my friend said was that, why is the Black Lives Matter movement such a big deal when there is black on black crime, right? And my immediate response was, so because black people, participate in criminal activity and sometimes end up hurting or killing another black person, that means it's okay for white police officers, to kill unarmed and innocent black men. And he was like, that's not what I'm saying. It's just, why is there such an uproar about police brutality when, all in all, it seems like black people don't even respect other black people enough to not commit crimes against their own kind. So why is it such a big deal? Which is a valid question that I have an answer to. So the reason why it's not the same. Okay, painting a scenario, let's say a black person kills and murders another black person. And let's say the police are called in a timely manner and police arrive in a timely enough manner to capture the person who did the killing, and they question him and they find out that he's guilty, and then they put him on trial and he goes to jail for what he did, right? The issue that black people or the black community have with the police brutality scenario and situation is that if a white police officer murders and kills an unarmed and or innocent black man, we don't get justice. That's what this whole thing is about. It's for equality and it's for justice. We feel like we are being treated unjustly. Our people are being killed and murdered for no reason other than the fact that they are black and look guilty, look like a thug, which, it seems there's really no way to avoid looking like a thug so long as your skin is brown. I mean, what are we supposed to wear? Collars and ties and suits as we walk to the grocery store in the middle of the night? Trayvon Martin with his mysterious hoodie that led to his death. So it's not so much the crime as it is the fact that there is injustice in it. Police officers are killing black men and getting paid leave, paid time off. No one, police officers are hardly getting arrested or reprimanded for the action of killing black men. And, that's why it keeps happening. no reprimandation, and that's our problem with it. Okay, so then my friend went on to say that statistically, black people are more violent than that of any other race. And I heard some other quote about how we make up about 12 to 13% of the population, but black people commit about 50% of the crimes. Now, my response to that is that truth doesn't necessarily coincide with statistics, okay? Like, for example, statistically, white people and black people smoke the exact same amount of weed. But if you look at the statistics on who gets arrested for weed-related charges or drug-related charges, black people get arrested way more than white people, like over 50% more. And keeping in mind that we make up a smaller percentage of the population, that speaks volumes. That's how often the minority of the population is pulled over or antagonized or, questioned by police officers. It's not necessarily a testament that, you're doing something wrong and you shouldn't have to deal with the repercussions of your actions. I'm just saying that white people do not have to deal with the antagonizing or the constant concern or stops about them making good or bad choices. Like, they're just assumed to be making the right choice unless, it's an obvious criminal act. And even then, they may or may not be stopped by police officers. So there's clearly an unfair treatment amongst the two races. There are certain things that white people can get away with that black people would not so easily get away with. And I think it's fair to admit that. Like, I don't think that anyone's racist for admitting that. It's kind of like one of those facts. Like, I don't know how to, it's not an opinion. Like, it is a fact. My own personal account for falsified statistics and stuff like that, because let's not forget that people are arrested, black people are arrested, falsely accused of crimes that, they didn't commit, and they actually end up going to jail and serving time for these crimes. And I know 3 personal, friends of mine who have been arrested or have been charged for crimes that they did not commit. And that's just within my circle of friends. And I don't hang out with a bunch of thugs, okay? I went to college, I speak properly, I have my education, I grew up in I would say a mixed environment, but still predominantly white setting. I have white friends just as much as I have black friends. So, and honestly, one of my friends who was falsely accused of a crime or got charged for a crime that he didn't commit, hung out with a vast majority of white people, loves to skateboard, had a lot of the same hobbies and likes as other white people. He's not a thug. He doesn't dress thuggish, and he had a job up until the charge on his record. So the story is about a relative of mine who just turned 18 at the time. He had a girlfriend that was white. He was hanging out with 2 of her white friends. They were driving in a vehicle together. It was a friend of the girlfriend's car who was driving. His girlfriend was in the passenger seat, another white girl in the other back seat, and then he was in the driver's side back seat or whatever. They're driving. The friend ran a police stop, there was just a random police stop, and they were smoking weed on the road, which my cousin, he was asleep in the back seat. She ran a police stop, which automatically should have been a ticket on her part, might I just add. The police chase after her, they stop her, they ask everyone to get out of the car, they discover the substance, the illegal substance. My cousin is just waking up, he gets out of the car, the police officer advises all of the girls to go home. My cousin ended up getting charged for the marijuana, and it went on his record. He lost his job because of it, and a series of other things happened in response to that. I've also heard countless other stories of, one story is a friend of mine who went to Las Vegas to celebrate his 21st or 20-something birthday. He went to a casino in Las Vegas with some of his friends. He had dreads, he was wearing a white t-shirt and blue jeans. Apparently some guy got robbed on the elevator, camera footage, and the robber had dreads, was wearing a white shirt and blue jeans. Upon exiting the casino with his friends, they were just, kind of traveling the strip or whatever. on vacation, and police officers rampaged my friend and basically was accusing him of being the one who robbed this man on the elevator. He didn't have the wallet that was stolen. He didn't have any of the merchandise that was quote unquote stolen. He admitted that it wasn't him, you know, but they still brought him in for questioning. He didn't worry about it so much because he knew that he was innocent, so he figured he would be let go pretty soon. Arrested. 25 years. Yeah, 25 years. Wrongfully accused. There's no evidence other than the camera footage catching the back of some other dread-headed guy's head, and he's in jail. And there goes another percent in your, 12% of black people commit 50% of the crimes. You know what I mean? There's a lot of wrongfully accused black men out here who are just getting locked up for crimes that they did not commit. Sometimes on the hands of white people. God forbid you have some white friends and y'all all get caught. Usually, you're the one that's going to get in trouble, more than likely. Everybody else gets slaps on the wrist, and you will be charged with something. So, not quite sure how that correlates with murders and what have you, but at the end of the day, I know for a fact that there is unfair treatment in America due to our skin complexion. You can't tell me otherwise because I know it. The fact of the matter is that statistic, that black people are more violent statistic that is just kind of going around here and proven to be reasonable cause for white people to treat black people unfairly, that's the reason for all of these unnecessary, unarmed, innocent black people dying at the hands of police officers. You know what I mean? And it comes from none other than fear. I don't think that every police officer that shoots at a black person is necessarily racist. I think it's the same fear that, women have if a black man walks by on the sidewalk and you hug your purse a little bit tighter, or you see a black man walking a little too close to your car, so you lock the car doors. I'm not gonna lie, I even fall victim of it. Like, I sometimes judge someone based off of their appearance, and I will hug my purse a little tighter or be a little, but I just don't trust anybody. It's not really just black people. I do the same thing to whites and what have you. I just don't trust people very easily. That same fear is what I feel police officers have when they get to the scene of a crime, or they get to a call off dispatch that says, arrive to this area, the criminal is said to be black and this tall and wearing this. There's a certain level of fear, I think, that comes with interacting with a black man. And the problem, or the difference between a white woman or any woman for that matter, just holding her purse a little bit tighter in comparison to a police officer arriving to a situation, is that they have a gun. So they respond and react to their fear a little bit differently, and it usually results in the death of someone. So they kind of shoot first and ask questions later. And that's the problem that we're having. And then an even bigger problem that we're having is that there's also no repercussion for that action. White police officers are still roaming the streets with their weapons and their badges, able to continue to do this over and over again. Honestly, I feel like the real solution would be like some sort of cultural awareness training within the police academy. In order to get your badge, you have to, pass some sort of cultural awareness test, exam. I don't know, but we have to do something where, police officers are able to disarm and de-escalate a situation amongst black people the same ways that they de-escalate and disarm situations involving white people. I don't understand why there's such a large indifference between the two. And, to have to argue the point when it's so clearly so clear and so obvious in the statistics and the number of deaths, innocent and unarmed deaths brought about, and the only reason why it's coming out now is because of modern technology, because of camera phones and the ability to publicize it through media. Without that, this has been going on for years. This isn't new. The Black Lives Matter movement is nothing more than a Black Panther movement. It's been happening for years, and to say like, oh, things have gotten better, which, I'm not going to say that they haven't. They have, but we're still dealing with the same issues in terms of interracial relations amongst black people and police officers. My friend also brought to question or raised awareness about the fact that white people get killed by police officers way more than black people, and in numbers. And I admitted that is probably true. It is true. It's a fact. But when you look at the percentage that we make up in America, 13%, the fact that more white people die from police shootings is almost expected because we make up the vast majority of the population. But if you look at the percentages, the fact that we make up such a small percentage, and like 256 of us died in like the year 2014 or 2015 from police shootings, whereas I would say white people, like 300 and something of white people died that same year. It's only 100 apart, which, only their lives. They're still lives and they still mean a great deal. But it's only 100 people apart. And the number of white people, the number of black people, the percentage is much different. So just, that doesn't really play into this conversation. My friend also mentioned and took issue with the fact that black people tend to play the race card way too much. My feelings about playing the race card is that it heeds results in situations where you may feel like you're being treated unfairly. And, not to say that the reason why we're being treated unfairly is always because we're black. It might be that our waitress is ignoring us because they just had a really bad day that day. But if you see them attending to every white table in your immediate surroundings, but they haven't come back and asked you if you need anything, your first instinct as a person who grows up being black and deals with being treated differently because they're black their entire lives, it's the first conclusion that we jump to. When we speak on it, when we say things like, why am I not being treated fairly? Why are you treating everyone else around me like this, but you're treating me a certain way? Is it because I'm black? Unfortunately, that heeds results. That makes people a little more attentive. That makes people more responsive. That means we're going to get great service. That means we're going to start to get equal treatment, if not better treatment than, that of our white counterparts. So it heeds results in situations where we feel like we're being treated unfairly. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting when you feel like you're being treated unfairly, especially since white people are so easily offended at the idea of them being considered and called a racist. They definitely, stop you all and they, but I feel like we all have the right to admit when we feel like we are being called out of our name unwarrantedly, or if we feel like we're being treated unfairly. So just like white people do not like to be called racist, if they feel like they are not, making a racist act, they're being called racist for none other than the fact that they're white. As a black woman and a black person, if I feel like I'm being treated unfairly because of my skin color, I also serve that same ability to call that out and acknowledge it. And so my friend then told me this interesting story, and I hope he doesn't get mad at me. I hope this video doesn't go viral or anything like that. But I'm going to share the story with you. So he was telling me that when he was in like maybe 7th or 8th grade, he had a bag of chips on the bus that he was eating. He was really hungry, and this black kid asked him for some of his chips. Apparently, he told the kid no because he was really hungry, and the black kid responded by grabbing his bag of chips, crumbling them up in his hands, and throwing them onto the floor. My friend proceeded to push the black kid in anger and hostility, and the bus driver sent them both to the principal's office, and apparently the black kid accused my friend of being racist, and the principal believed the black kid over my friend, and he got like in-school suspension or got suspended or something like that, received repercussions for his actions in terms of, I guess, not sharing his chips. So I'm not fair. Totally not fair. What I did tell my friend is the same way that that particular kid used his words to call you a racist. You could easily say in response, I'm not a racist. I didn't share my chips because I was hungry, and I would have not shared them with you, whether you were white, black, Hispanic, or Asian. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter was I was hungry and I didn't want to share my chips with you. Pretty much all you have to say. Just admit that I'm not treating you any differently than I would treat a fellow white person. I wouldn't share my chips with you regardless. That's literally all it takes to pretty much shut us up. Well, to shut me up, I guess. I can't speak for all black people. So my friend then said, you know, why do I have to make it about race to prove that I'm not racist? He's like, why can't I just say that I was hungry and I didn't want to share my chips to explain why I didn't want to share my chips? Why do I have to say, you know, if you were white, if you were Asian, if you were Hispanic, why do I have to mention every race in the book in order to prove that I'm not a racist? He said, it seems a little counterproductive to me. And I can definitely understand that perspective. From and I'm going to go ahead and generalize here and say our, as a black community, from our perspective, it's always been about race. From the time that we entered school, like at the age of 5, you notice little things, like how you get treated, how you get sent to the principal's office a lot quicker than your white counterparts, how you get in trouble a lot quicker, how people look at you differently, the way that you're perceived in the media and the outlet, what you see on TV about yourself. We are taught at a very, very young age, all throughout our school career, based off what we see on TV and things like that, in the mass media, you turn on the news, whatever, it is engraved in us that we are somehow less than that of a white person because of the color of our skin, whether it be children's books, not seeing yourself perceived in children's books, in movies and shows, like always being the bad. Like even someone mentioned, and this is a silly analogy, but someone mentioned The Lion King and how all the good lions were light and Scar, and the hyenas are darker brown and black. Like the bad guys are always darker. It's literally engraved in us, and it's very minor. You know, as a female looking at the Disney princesses, we didn't get a black Disney princess until I was an adult. And even she wasn't even a princess. She married into being a prince. Well, I guess Cinderella did the same thing. But either way, it's literally fed to us in every way, shape, and form. So for us, it is about race. It's always about race. And you know, we can't necessarily just shut that off. We can't just turn that off. So, for example, I in one of my cultural awareness classes at Georgia State, oddly enough, we had like this little discussion amongst a group and discussed our most racist our most racist encounters. And I was telling a group of white women, I was the only black girl in my class, a group of white women about my encounter when I moved to Florida for a short time. Me and my mom, I was too young, but my mom was looking for an apartment. And we walked into a leasing office, and literally, like maybe 2 people looked up at us. Nobody responded to us. Nobody acknowledged our presence. No one said, how may I help you? Are you looking for, an apartment to rent? And can I show you? Like, no one acknowledged our presence. We stood there for about a minute. And then right behind us in walked an older white gentleman. And immediately after he walked in, everyone, and it wasn't even a vast majority of white people who worked in the leasing office. It was predominantly Hispanic. But either way, they did not acknowledge us. As soon as the older white gentleman walked in, almost everyone stood up at once. Everyone started greeting him. How may I help you, sir? Are you okay? Would you like a bottle of water? Sit down right here. Like, they were acknowledging him. And my mom and I were still sitting there, ungreeted, unattended to. My mom is a bit more boisterous than I am. I, to this day, would probably just be like, excuse me. But my mom is much louder, much aggressive. She grew up in a time where segregation had literally just ended. So she experienced a lot more growing up in terms of being treated unfairly because of her skin color. So when she feels that way, she's immediate to acknowledge, and she's immediately acknowledges it. So her response was, so y'all not going to greet us? You don't see me standing here? What is it, because I'm black? And like I said, immediately it heated results. We got greeted. People started talking to us. They showed us the apartment. Obviously, we didn't move in there. But our immediate conclusion, in being treated unfairly in that instance was, it's because we're black. So right after finishing that story to my friends, one of the white girls responded with a statement saying that if that had happened to her, she would have been like, wow, these people are really mean. That would be the beginning and end of her thought, right? Like, these people are really mean. So the difference between us, and that's kind of like that invisible white privilege, I would say white people don't have to think about it. They don't have to think about race. They don't have to think, is it because I'm this? You know, as a black person, whenever we're being treated unfairly, it's kind of one of the first conclusions we jump to because we've dealt with it and see it all our lives. That's why, and I explained to my friend, that's why if you're trying to prove to a black person that you are not racist, to legitimize your argument by saying, I wouldn't treat you any differently if you were white, Hispanic, or Asian, to us, that's all we need to hear to know, oh, okay, you're just hungry. Like, that's literally it. It sucks that you have to bring up every race to prove that you're not a racist, but the fact of the matter is, you may be blind to the injustices amongst black people and people of other colors, and other cultures and ethnicities and religions and backgrounds, but we are not blind to it. We see it like open eyes, we see it. You know what I mean? It's literally the first thought we go to. So if you want to prove yourself not racist, just acknowledge that I'm not treating you any differently than I would treat anyone else. And that's basically all we want, like equality. That's literally what we've been fighting for like years, is just equality. The best way that I can put it, and this is something I learned from, I got my degree in early childhood education, and I minored in special education. And one of the things that my professor taught me, she was really insightful, and she worked with kids who had autism. And in our writing assignments, in our essays and such like that, she would always dot points for saying things like autistic kid. You put the disability before the child. She explained her reasoning for that was because, whenever you put the disability before the child, it makes her feel like all you see is that disability. You don't see the fact that it's a child, that is a child. So she always would use terminology and language like child with autism, a child with, handy capabilities, because they're a child first, they're a person first. And, that's what we have to see. Beyond their disability, beyond maybe being wheelchair bound, or beyond, having certain intellectual difficulties or what have you, they are a person first. And what we're doing is we're fighting so that they will be able to read on this level, or, do math, communicate, whatever the case may be, but see them as a person first. That was what she taught us, right? And we learned about some of the inequalities that people who do have disabilities face, that as a person without a disability, I never even thought of, like handy accessible banks and different store locations that were not handicap accessible. That was a big deal. Places and stores and stuff that didn't have bathrooms that could fit a wheelchair in it. Bathrooms that were not handicap accessible. That was a huge deal for someone with a disability. As a person who has the ability to walk, it never crossed my mind. It never crossed my mind that I don't see, like a ramp to get into the bank. Like, it never crossed my mind. But, and you're not really presented with that difficulty until someone tells you about it, or until it's introduced. And that's my privilege. That's my invisible privilege, is that I can walk upstairs and I can go to the bathroom without really thinking twice about the size of the bathroom. So that being said, I saw, and also we got to live a day in the life of a person who was blind. And one of our tour guides on this big, it was like a museum that was like pitch black, and you can't see. All you can do is hear sounds, smell things, and you find out at the end of your tour that your tour guide was actually blind, because you can't see anything. All you can do is like reach out and feel, and it's interesting to go through the life of a person who is blind. You're like, you never think about how someone lives their life until you actually experience it, or until someone tells you about their daily struggle as someone who experiences their struggles. Would I ever sit back and tell someone who is handicapped that their arguments are invalid? Just figure out how to get your wheelchair up some stairs and stop complaining? No, I would never say anything like that because I don't know their struggle, And that's basically the same concept in terms of dealings with people who are black. Like, see me as a person first. I'm not my statistic. I'm not pregnant out of wedlock. I'm not the girlfriend to a drug dealer. I'm not. I do like chicken and watermelon, but that's because they're good. It's not because I'm black. It's because chicken is good and watermelon is good. I'm pretty sure there's a vast majority of white people who also like chicken and watermelon. Can we please stop with the stereotypes? I am not my statistic. I am not my color. I am not any of that. Just that's all we want. We want, as a group, as a collective group of people who have different cultures, different backgrounds, different religious views. All we want is to be seen as a person first. Now, I kind of veered off the topic of the Black Lives Matter movement. The last statement that my friend made when we were having this debate was that he was saying that the Black Lives Matter movement seems more like a war on cops, a war on police officers. He mentioned the shootings of police officers who were innocent and what have you, and he asked how that was any different from the KKK. The KKK was a group of white supremacists who felt like they were better than black people. They killed, hung, murdered, beat, raped millions upon millions upon millions of black men, women, and children over the course of 400 years. The Black Lives Matter movement is an organization started for the mere fact, not a black supremacist group. We don't think that our lives matter more than that of a white person's. We started this group just to fight for justice, so that if a black child or a black person is killed, murdered by police officers, and they're unarmed and or innocent, that police officer goes through a fair trial, either loses their job and goes to jail for their crime, because that's the justice system. That's justice. That's what we're supposed to be getting, but we're not. That's why the Black Lives Matter movement started, right? For fairness, not because we think that we're better than. I remember a long time ago when the Trayvon Martin situation first happened. I was at a birthday party, my brother's birthday party, and one of his friends said jokingly and slightly hostilely, that they're not going to learn. He said, after the Trayvon Martin thing came out, said they're not going to learn until white police officers start getting shot in the head point blank and start dying. That's when they'll figure out what we're fighting for. That's when it'll actually mean something to them, because right now the Black Lives Matter movement, or the fact that we're getting killed, didn't mean anything to anybody. I thought he was being silly. I was like, okay, that's a bit extreme, a bit harsh to go around. It was kind of a thuggish mentality, thought process. I was like, okay, nobody's going to go around killing cops because, Well, some years later, there were some thuggish mentality black people who did think that way. If you're going to kill my people, for no reason, and there is no justice served, I will take justice into my own hands, and I will kill you. Not the right way to handle it, not a proper way to handle it. But the difference between the KKK and the Black Lives Matter movement is that the KKK kills men, women, and children, beyond kills, tortures, denies job opportunities to black people, men, women, and children, for years upon years upon years, for no other reason other than the fact that they're black. The Black Lives Matter movement stands for equality and justice. I would say maybe like 5 to 10% of those people within the Black Lives Matter movement, a collective group who wants peace, justice, and equality, 5 to 10% of those people have a thuggish mentality and decided to take justice and things that matter into their own hands, and they went out and they decided to shoot police officers. Does that define the entire Black Lives Matter movement? No. What we stand for defines the Black Lives Matter movement. The fact that we want to be treated as equals within the justice system. Not that we think that we're better than white people, so we go out and kill white cops. That is the difference. I'm not saying it's right, but to label the entire Black Lives Matter movement based off of a handful or a small percentage of those members who decided to take matters into their own hands is not fair. The KKK is an entire group. It's not like a big group of positively thinking people and there's a small group doing something bad. The whole thing is derived around the fact that they think that they're better than us. Okay? It's different. It's different. And that is the end of my rant. I hope that I helped somebody.